Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A. It is November 5th, 2018. This week's Q&A was on OTC supplements, so anything related to over-the-counter supplements and their use. And let's see. Okay, so we'll start on Instagram. Questions. Okay, what are the top 3 OTC subs you would buy for overall health? What is a product or two you think isn't worth buying? Okay, so top 3 I'd probably buy. Now this could be individual, and some of these questions might be individual, just based on the person and their needs. But for me, I would probably buy a quality omega-3 supplement. So if I'm going to buy a single omega-3 supplement, I'm probably going to buy krill oil. Second would be, I'm probably going to buy citrus bergamot for my cardiovascular health, for my lipids. And then third, I don't know. I would probably either buy something like Berberine, or something like, if I wasn't going to go the insulin sensitivity route, probably buy something related to digestion. For me personally, I'd probably buy betaine, HCl, because it does help me with digestion because of the acid, but it also gives me TMG, trimethylglycine, which is also important in methylation process. So for me, that's probably something I would look to buy. Okay, products that I wouldn't buy. Oh boy. Well, I mean, there are constantly things coming out that are kind of that look good on paper that we debunk, and really we figure out they aren't good. I feel like most of the people watching this probably aren't going to be buying something like deer antler or something ridiculous like that. So that's probably not really worth mentioning. Some other things that you might not need to spend money on. Well, we could say BCAAs versus EAAs. I'll probably buy the EAAs instead. But I mean, this is a hard question to answer. There's not really anything that I would say isn't worth buying. It's just it's situational. The way I would probably answer this question is, I do find some people will take a lot of over-the-counter quote-unquote health supplements that probably don't need them. Yeah, I would consider certain things purely preventative. There's some things you take that are just going to be preventative. You're not going to really see them doing anything necessarily, but you take them anyhow. But I find that I gave the example of citrus bergamot. For me, it works well because I just genetically, and most of my family, we just kind of funky lipid profiles. All right, so for me, it makes sense. Now, if somebody has a perfect lipid profile and they're not doing anything that's going to take it out of range, and they're not doing anything that's going to damage their cardiovascular health in that regard, then that might not really be worth them buying something like that. Might not make any sense. GDA supplements, for example. I talk about GDA supplements a lot, but I don't necessarily have every single person use them. I do think that they do have a place for most people in certain situations. But again, if you have perfect insulin sensitivity and you partition nutrients like a champ all the time, you probably really don't need it. It's probably just save your money. So yeah, I would say my answer to that would be, just don't over prescribe yourself supplements that you might not need, based on your needs as an individual. So next one, injectable carnitine, useful, optimal dosing, etc. All right. So you're going to hear a lot of different opinions on this. Some people are going to swear by it, say it's the most amazing thing ever, you should use it. Some people will say that it's not. We know that the oral version's bioavailability is very poor. I would say that the L-carnitine, L-tartrate version does have some definite benefits taken orally. I think there's some things that it could be useful for. But for injectable carnitine, what I find normally is that it, and this is what makes sense on paper too, is that it probably works better for people that have slightly less carnitine stores. Okay, so older people typically. When I say older, I don't really have an age. There's not really a number on that. But if you're dosing it in a younger person, you might not notice a lot. And that's just from observational evidence. That's just been what I've seen, that it tends to work a little bit better as somebody gets older. And that's probably just because their carnitine stores become depleted more. Dosing, you can hear all kinds of different dosing. And again, it's also going to depend on how depleted are your carnitine stores, how much of it do you actually need. So, think of it that way. But if you're dosing like on the really, really high end, some people will say as much as 200 milligrams, I believe like 200 milligrams per 50-ish pounds of body weight or lean body mass. So, for somebody that's 250 pounds, that's about 1,000 milligrams at once. That's quite a bit per day. And if you're buying injectable carnitine, you're going to go through it pretty quick. Most people aren't dosing it that high. Most people that tend to get results from it are lower. They're probably in the 400 to 600, maybe 800 range for a lot of them. So, yeah, but again, try it, see if it works. If it gives you any results. If not, then you might not be getting any benefit from it. You might have plenty of carnitine stores already present. It's not really worth using. So, all right. Next one, your current supplement stack, specifically your intra and post-workout supplements. All right. Well, I don't use anything post-workout that specifically. I have a whole food meal post-workout, but I do use supplements intra-workout. Go through just the pre and intra-workout supplements. Typically pre-workout, I use Project AD's Nitrox, so it does have some ingredients for vasodilation, but also I like the high dose of Hydromax glycerol in there. So it's for the volumizing effect and the hydration effect. I like that. And I'll also use, if I want a stimulant, I can add a stimulant to it. But intra-workout, that's going to really vary depending on, what my nutrition is, how many carbs am I eating. Right now, everything's on the higher end. So yeah, I definitely have quite a bit. I'm doing anywhere from 100 to 125 grams of carbs intra-workout, depending on the day, depending on what the diet is that day. And those come from, typically, again, I use the Project AD product, the Raging Full product, but I like Carbolin too, and cyclic dextrins work fine for me also. I just know that cyclic dextrins cost a little bit more, and I haven't really noticed any difference between cyclic dextrins and Carbolin that I could write home about, really. So for the cost, I'm just probably going to stick with the Carbolin or the Raging Full. So that's really it. Intra workout. I use the carbohydrates. I use an amino acid product too. I should mention that. So essential amino acids, either the Aminotor or another EAA product. I might occasionally add hydrolyzed protein. Again, depends on how high my protein intake is. I currently do, but I don't always do that. It's just right now with my protein intake's very high, so I do add that in because I'm just not overly hungry right now. And that's a good place to add in some more calories via protein and carbohydrates. So I definitely do that. But it's not all that exciting. Those are really the base products. There's not a whole lot more that I add in. I mentioned the Nitrox. Well, there's several things in there. So, I'm getting multiple ingredients. And I'm just not adding a lot of the singular ingredients people might add separately, your citrulline malate or free-form citrulline or agnitine or creatine. I add creatine. You know what? Sometimes I forget to use creatine too, to be completely honest. But I eat a ton of beef, so not a ton, but I mean I eat beef daily, really, and all the protein I'm eating right now. I don't really worry about it that much, but in contest prep, I definitely do if protein intake isn't like through the roof crazy high. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so Facebook, researcher experience with the benefits of vitamin C post-workout to help with inflammation. Okay, that's a good question. So you could, when you look at training, you can look at the damage that it does to the tissue. So there's oxidative damage, there's tissue damage, there's inflammation. All these things are having acutely localized, more or less, just in the areas that you're beating up for the most part. On paper, it would seem like, hey, let's speed up that repair process with using something like a heavy antioxidant, vitamin C, for example, or using something that might blunt inflammation like your omega-3 supplements or curcumin or something along those lines. But I'm not really particularly fond of doing that. Most of the research shows us we don't want to blunt those processes. That's part of the adaptive process from training. So we don't want to blunt that that acute muscle damage. We definitely don't want, we don't want to blunt that inflammatory effect. So I would say probably not. I probably wouldn't really do those things. Now, if you are, especially for muscle growth, now if you are a strength athlete or a performance athlete, maybe. But I probably still would stay away from it just because a lot of the beneficial adaptations from training you still want them to take place. So I probably wouldn't do that. Not a big fan of having anything anti-inflammatory or heavy in antioxidants around training. So vitamin C itself, if you want to take it for immune function or, something along those lines, I don't see any issue with that. But just separate it. So, all right. Okay, so Berberine as a standalone GDA and experience with it. And then I also got the question, so I'll answer these together. So I also got a question, Berberine versus Metformin, are they really interchangeable? So I can kind of just do both. All right, so first off, Berberine and Metformin do have pretty similar effects in terms of what you're going to get out of them. Some pros and cons of both. Metformin's, for the most part, it's side effect. You're not really going to notice a lot of the side effects other than maybe potentially some of the changes in gut flora might make people feel a little funky at first, and they typically go away. It is said to deplete nutrients, perhaps like vitamin B12, for example, though I've yet to really see anyone have any become, get pernicious anemia from taking metformin. But I'm not saying that it couldn't happen. But Berberine, again, effects are pretty similar to metformin. Not really a lot of negatives that I've heard or have read. So both of them are relatively quote-unquote safe options to use. And they are pretty strong in terms of what they're doing. They're pretty effective. Now, are they interchangeable? Yeah, I mean, like I said, they have similar they have similar effects, though they do not have exactly the same mechanism. So this is something that for the longest time I think people thought that they were exactly the same. Like Berberine was a plant version, a botanical version of metformin. Really, it's not. Their mechanisms are not exactly the same. So they can actually be used together. You could use them both. Now, Berberine as a standalone GDA, yeah, you absolutely could have. I mean, if I was going to pick one ingredient, that probably would be it, I suppose. Over the counter, probably be Berberine, just because you're going to get the most bang for your buck out of it. Now, Berberine, again, going back to the mechanistic standpoint, not all GDAs are the same. So some of them are, some of them are going to be more of an insulin mimetic. Some of them are going to act like, look at Metformin, for example. You're not necessarily going to have direct glucose lowering effects when you take it. That's why it doesn't have to be taken with a meal. It doesn't have to be taken with carbohydrates. It's not insulin. It's not. You're not going to take it and go hypoglycemic from taking it. So it's it's acting mainly on limiting hepatic glucose output. So could you combine it? Could you take Metformin or Berberine or both a couple times a day, and then also add in other GDAs, your typical GDAs like Gymnema, I think that's how you say it. Your cinnamon, chromiums, Vandium, your ALA, your RALA, if you want to use that version. There's a whole host of other GDA ingredients you could add in. And again, they're not all the same from a mechanistic standpoint, so you could combine them. But as a standalone, yeah, I'd probably lean towards that as going to be one of the more effective for most people. Okay, so also asked, one of the people also asked here, if you have to pick a single, so if you have to pick a single ingredient OTC to take for blood pressure or organ health, what would it be? Just checked your Instagram, and I saw someone else ask the second one. Yeah, so I kind of answered that at the top, pick the top three, but I mean, I can expand on that too. There's actually one that I forgot to mention that I'm kind of kicking myself for, is probably curcumin, just because a good bioavailable curcumin product has a ton of benefits. Because systemic inflammation and chronic inflammation is going to contribute to so many issues across the board. It's a systemic stressor. It's going to contribute to virtually anything, virtually any negative process. Inflammation probably going to contribute to it. Now, it does have some positives, like we said, like in your acute localized type of inflammation from training, that's going to be different. But I could probably add curcumin in there as a really, really good overall supplement. It actually also has benefits in terms of insulin sensitivity. There's a whole host of benefits you're going to get from something that is that good at controlling inflammation. So probably add curcumin to that, just to kind of expand on the previous question. But he mentioned blood pressure specifically. So blood pressure and organ health. Again, I'm going to refer back to what I said earlier, where I mentioned you should focus on, what's going to be most relevant for you and your issues and what you need to control. Organ health is a really vast topic. We're talking about kidneys, liver. We could be talking about your pancreas. We could be talking about your heart. We could be talking about your spleen. I don't know. It could be anything. So that's pretty broad. Now, blood pressure, I might use something like garlic. I do like a really good garlic extract is pretty useful in that, and it's also useful in terms of your lipids as well. So yeah, a good garlic extract you could maybe tack on to that question as well. But the organ health, you have to be a little more specific. Are we talking about kidneys, liver, heart? What are we? Not really sure exactly what's being mentioned there. So next one is GDA. Okay, lots of GDA questions. It's all right. GDA with pre-workout drink, and then for Intra, Vitargo, or cyclic dextrins. Good idea, or better to take GDA with food, like taking it with a pre-workout meal? Okay. Now, I've actually experimented with this with myself and with some clients. Now, if someone's using exogenous insulin, this is pretty much it's not really going to make any much difference. But if somebody's not and they want to use a GDA pre-workout, I can't say that I saw a ton from it, but I feel like I saw a little bit from it. Maybe it was placebo effect, but I feel like most of the people did have a little bit better pump more consistently from it. So take that for what it's worth. Now, would taking it with the pre-workout meal versus an intra-workout being, seeing as how they're very close together, you're going to have the pre-workout, then you're going to have the intra-workout. Is that really that significant? Probably not, but, maybe try taking it with both and see what happens and see if you like it. I do feel that when it seemed most effective, and this is what would make the most sense as well, is somebody was deeper in the off season, they're eating more, they're having more intra-workout carbs, they're having more just carbs overall, more calories overall, and those GDAs were more effective. So, which makes sense because, someone's at a higher risk of becoming insulin resistant at that point. They have to partition more nutrients, so they're probably going to get more benefit from something like a GDA because their insulin sensitivity is just not going to be as good. So, yeah, I would try it. I would try taking it. This is, basically the way I had experimented with it with myself and a couple others were just try it pre-workout, try it intra-workout, or, like maybe right before you start training, or even just take the capsule and maybe break it open into your intra-workout, or take it, while you're training. Or try both and see what you think. So, with that said, now I would probably be taking something that's more of an insulin mimetic type of GDA, and I also would be careful of something like RALA or ALA, just because alpha lipoic acid is a pretty strong antioxidant, so I wouldn't want to take that around training. So, probably ditch that, and probably not going to use berberine. It's not going to be super effective, like right when you take it, like I mentioned previously, so I probably wouldn't do that. But most other GDAs would probably be pretty much okay to use in that point. Now, Vitargo or cyclic dextrins, I've used both. Neither of them upset my stomach, and that's more or less what I base carb selection on intra-workout for most people, is just how they tolerate it, how they feel on it. If it's doing a couple things, if it makes them sluggish, meaning it's probably pulling maybe too much blood into the GI tract and maybe taking away from the effects that you want, then I might not want to use that carb source. So something like that's a little slower, like dextrose or something, even though that does work for some people. Cyclic dextrins, I've actually found that actually does upset some people's stomachs, and I would assume it's probably because in high amounts, you're getting that extremely fast gastric emptying. It's just moving through really quickly, and it is upsetting your stomach. So again, just use what works for you, what feels best for you. I literally have 2 or 3 clients off the top of my head that we have taken they're having a lot of intra-workout carbs. These are people that are taking in like 100 grams intra-workout or more, 150, very high. And we split it. We split half Gatorade powder or dextrose or something similar with cyclic dextrins or Carbolin or Vitargo or something like that, because it's different rates of gastric emptying and different rates of digestion, and they feel better with that versus just cramming 150 grams of cyclic dextrin in there. And then Vitargo. I liked Vitargo when I used it. It's just expensive. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it. It has some different properties than cyclic dextrins and different properties than Carbolin too, and it might suit some people better. I encourage people to just try what works for them. So try to figure out what works for them. Okay, guys, that is it for the OTC supplement questions. I believe that brings us up on... All right. Yep, that brings us up on the end of it, about 24 minutes. So I will talk to you guys next time.